What's up, my folks? Alright, so today we're going to learn to make a GUI using Tkinder. A GUI is a graphical user interface, so that means we're going to make a little window that pops up, and we're going to make some stuff go on with said little window. Okay, so first things first, we need to import Tkinter, which is the library that we're going to use to generate this. I'm going to import it as TK. I am not a huge fan of star imports. If you watch other people's videos, you'll see some people use star imports to do this. The reason I'm not a huge fan of this for Tkinter is that it's a really big library. It has a ton of stuff in it. And I want to be explicit about which things I'm using from Tkinter. Okay. There are some nice docs for Tkinter, but the official ones are a little rough. So the good docs that I've found are the ones on this tutorials point. There's also some decent YouTube videos available. I'm going to put the ones that I recommend either in the video description or in the Canvas modules, so those should be available. There are a lot of ways to accomplish most of the tasks here, so don't feel like there's one and only one way to do it. If you see a different way in a video, it's possible that it's superior to the one that I'm showing. So just, FYIs. Oops. All right, so first things first, we're going to import Tkinder as TK. It should be a standard module, so you shouldn't need to install it. If you did need to install it for whatever reason, you can just pip install it. All right, it comes as part of the standard set of libraries, so you shouldn't have to install it. So our first thing first, what we're going to do is we're going to, out of the Tkinter class, what we're going to declare is kind of the idea of a main window. Some people will call this root. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna call it window because I kind of think of it as the main window. So I'm gonna say window is tk.tk, and so what that's creating, right, is that's going in the TK library and it's creating a member of the TK class. So this window is kind of the idea of a Tkinter window. Okay. And then I'm gonna alter a couple of properties for that. So I'm gonna set the window.title property, and you can see I'm getting some nice auto-completes here already. And my title window, or my Windows title, is going to be testing a title. And let's just see if this generates anything. So I'm also going to throw a diagnostic print line in here at the bottom, just because I have a little trouble sometimes finding TK windows, so I just want to know that the code actually executed. Success! Look for the window. And that's just to let me know that I should be looking for a Tkinder window. Okay, so we get a run, we get a success, look for the window. I don't actually have a window open. So you can see along this bar on the bottom of the screen here that there's no Python generated windows open. So something went wrong here. And the thing that went wrong is actually just that I didn't tell the window to stay open. I didn't tell it to kind of do its thing, right? So it may have opened for a tick and then disappeared. I'm not actually sure. But if I want it to stay open, what I need to do is I need to, right before I call success, I want to do window.main loop. And so what that's doing is that's calling the main loop method out of the Tkinter class, right? And enacting it on the window object. So what this is doing is this is putting essentially a while loop. It's opening this kind of infinite loop so it can listen to whether or not stuff is happening to it. So now if I hit go, I should eventually get a thing. Kill that terminal. If I hit go, I'm seeing, interesting, I have a window. It came up, but my success, look for the window, didn't print. Why might that be the case? They get printed before. If I close the window, oh, it's falling into the main loop, right? So this success print line needs to be above the main loop. So anything that you put after that main loop isn't going to happen until you close the window, because what it's doing is it's executing that loop for your window. So it's going to fall in there, and it's going to stay in there until the window's closed. Okay. So now I've got success. Look for the window. Here's my little window. It always seems to be this size. It's resizable. Right. It's got a title. You can see the title. It says testing and title. Okay, cool. That's actually pretty chill. It's like 5 lines of code, and one of them's a print line. And it opens a window. That's right. Okay, so everything in Tkinter is what's called a widget. And there are 2 steps to every widget. So the 2 steps to every widget are that you need to create the widget, and then you need to put it on the window. Right? So let me try that out. I'm going to try that out by just creating a label. So I'm going to say that I have an entry label. And that entry label is going to be a tk.entry. Oh, no, sorry. It's going to be a tk.label. Got a little bit ahead of myself. Not bad. And tk label takes some stuff. So the first thing it takes is an argument that is which thing is it attached to. So I'm attaching this to the window thing, right? I think it's a good idea to do this. There's some kind of more varsity like arranging of stuff, things that we're going to get into later. And in those cases, it really matters that you have this window. And then we've got a whole bunch of optional keyword arguments. And so those optional keyword arguments are things like, what's the text I want it to display? So the text I want it to display is something like, enter some text. That's what it does. Other things that we can change in there are, we could alter the font, we can change the foreground color and the background color, like we can change some stuff. I'll let you guys fiddle with that. If you look on the docs, where did my docs thing go? Tkinder docs. If I go and click on the, I'm making a label. So if I go click on label, you'll see that there's all these things that you can set. So we can set padding, we can set relief, we can set text, blah, blah, blah. This thing about the string variable is actually a solid idea. We'll get into setting some kind of setting some variable text into these later. That might be a good way to do it. Okay, so I've got my entry label. Now if I hit run, let's see. And PS, it pays to check whether the window's open. If the window's already open, you can't run. Like, running this won't do you any good. Okay, so I've got my window, but it doesn't say enter some text in it. And the reason it doesn't say enter some text in it is not that I had a problem creating the label. The label's created, it said success, so I'm assuming that means it was successful. The problem is I created the label, but I never attached it to the window. I created this idea, I attached it to the window in the code, but I never actually told it to appear. So if I want to tell it to appear, I have to tell it where to appear. And so there's 3 options for this. There's a let the computer just put it somewhere. There's a I would like it to be put in this row and column. And then there's a I want it to be put here. So those are pack is the one that I'm going to start with. So I'm just going to say entry label dot pack. And this is the one that lets the computer kind of pick where to put it. So now this is a thing that let's see. Yeah, sorry. So the thing I'm having trouble with is that my window got really small, and so it got hard to hold on to. So there's a couple different ways to resolve this. There's a few ways to resolve this. I'm going to do the simple one in this video, and I'll do a better one in the next video, okay? So the simple one is just to say, all right, I want this window to have some geometry. So I'm going to go say window, geometry, and then I'm just going to pass it the size I want it to be. So I want this to be a 600 by 600 window. So now if I hit run, I get down here a 600 by 600 window that says enter some text on top. Okay, so that's using the pack method. That just puts it in here. Right? It just shoves it in there. You'll notice that if we resize it, it stays kind of centered, which is not bad, actually. I don't mind the way the pack method puts things in. Some people want much more control. If you want more control, the other two methods are called grid and place. Okay, and what we're doing with these two lines is we are creating a label widget and putting. I'm going to use putting because it's not placing. And we're putting it in the window. Okay. And then these guys were creating the window. Okay, so I'm creating a window. It's got some properties. I'm creating my label widget. I'm putting it in the window. And then these two lines, right, this bottom line is keep the window open. Right, so that's going to let it listen. Okay, now my next goal here is that I would like to get some kind of other options going. So there's two other things I want to show off in this video. Those are an entry box and a button. So the entry box is pretty easy. If you want to make an entry box, I'm just going to call it text entry, right? Because I'm very creative. And it's going to be tk.entry. And so that's going to make a tk entry box. I'm going to attach it to the window. Right, that's its kind of master in this case. And then I'm going to put, I'm just going to set the width to 20 here. This is one of the properties. You can look up all the others. There's a whole bunch. This is just so that it's not kind of dorky. So let's see what it looks like both with and without that. Okay, so I have made a classic error. Nothing has appeared. The classic error I've made is a logic error. Nothing's wrong with the syntax of the code, right? The logic error I've made is that I didn't actually tell the entry box to show up, right? So if I want the entry box to show up, I need to do text entry dot, and I'm just going to call pack again. And now what this is going to do is this is just going to shove it underneath the previous thing. Okay, so here's my window. It's got this text box in it. I can type in here now. Nothing happens with that. If I hit enter, nothing goes on. Okay. You guys have seen forms like this. There's a million of them out there. These are on, every program ever, right? So, what I'd like to do is create also a button that, does something with the text in this box. Okay. So, this is my, create a, and see, this is a stupid comment. Right? This is really a dumb comment because it's almost really clear what this is doing. So I'm creating a text entry box. And I don't know, I would argue that comment's not really needed. Okay. This maybe is more, well, this comment is also silly because I'm going to create a button. There's one important thing that's different about buttons. So most of it's pretty similar. So I'm just going to grab some stuff about buttons over here. All right, so I've got a submit button. It's a member of the TK button class, right? It's attached to the window, and it's going to say something on it. So it's going to say submit. And then it's going to have a, I'm going to leave width off. I'm going to put a command in here. Actually, let me skip the command for just 1 second. Okay, so let's just double check that this is being created. Oh, shit. Good call. I need to pack it on. Okay, so that's going to stuff it onto my window here. Okay, so I've got my little thing. It's appearing. It's resizable, which is neat. If I put something in here and hit submit, nothing happens. The reason for that is that I haven't yet defined what happens when the button gets clicked. So the way you define what happens when the button gets clicked is you change the command property of the button. And the kick about this is that this thing needs to be a function. So I'm going to say that this calls the submit function. Right? Now, I don't have a submit function, so right now this is going to kick an error if I run it. So see how it says name submit's not defined? That's because I didn't write a submit function yet. So I'm going to go up here to the top, right? And I'm going to define my submit function. And now I'm going to add a decent comment. So this is called when the submit button is pressed. Actually, I guess I could probably just leave off the subject and verb there. This is called when the submit button is pressed. Okay, so for right now, I'm just going to put a print line in here. And I'm just going to say submit button pressed. Good. Okay, and the reason that this function here doesn't have parentheses is that this is saying the command function that's called when the button is pressed is the submit function, right? It's not calling the submit function. It's saying the command that goes with this button is the submit function. So you can't put parens here. It won't work. So when I call it, I get this. And now if I hit submit, I can see that I get submit button pressed shows up there. So that's actually working. Now it's not doing anything with my text entry box, which I would really kind of like it to. So let me get the contents of my text entry box. And to get those contents, I'm going to use a formatted string. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, all right, we're going to print. And we're going to print a formatted string. Oops, sorry, awful quotes. We're going to print a formatted string, and that formatted string is going to say the contents of the entry box are :space. And then the way we get things out of a text entry box is we need to call the call the box's name. So it's text _ entry. And we're going to do .get. So the get function should be familiar from, or the get method should be familiar from dictionaries and stuff. Same thing here. It just goes to get what it has, and what it has in the case of a text entry box is literally just whatever's put in there. Okay, so let's run this thing. Oops, shit. Accidentally erase everything. I just wanted a period. Let's run this thing. Okay, so here I have my thing. If I press my button, I get the contents of the entry box are nothing. If I put some stuff in there, if I change it, I get the updated stuff. If I delete some stuff, I get the updated stuff. Okay, so, this is working. I'd really like it to display on the thing here. Right? So I'd like it to appear in my window. And so I'm going to make a little results label. Let's see. Yep. So I'm going to make my little results label. I prefer to create things in order just so I don't lose track of them, rather than putting like the labels together and the entries together and the buttons together. I really prefer to have them in the order that I want them to appear on the screen. But, you know. So the results label is going to be a TK label, and it is going to live in the window, and it is going to contain nothing thus far. Okay? So right now when I run this, I'll get this kind of, oops, sorry. And obviously we need to pack it in there. Okay, so right now it's just going to show up as nothing. So I didn't get an error, but it's right here, but you can't see it because it doesn't have anything in it. If I hit submit, I get contents of boxes. Okay, so, and actually I'm sort of annoyed by, whatever. We'll deal with it in a second. Okay, so I would like this to get whatever was entered in the box, I want it to appear in that label. So there's a couple different ways to set the contents of a label. I'm going to use the one that I think is most intuitive. So I'm just going to call up the object, right, the results label that I want to change. I'm going to use .configure. And then the thing I want to configure is the text field, right? And I want to set the text field equal to the results of this get. Now, this is sort of inefficient, so I'm actually just going to store that into a variable. Let's see. So I don't want to store it into... I'm just going to call it an entry. So the entry is going to be the result of calling get on my text entry box. Right? And then we're going to put that entry in here and entry in here. And it's going to yell at me if I have white space around that. It's yelling at me because I have white space there. All right, cool. Let's run this and see what we get. Okay, so I have here my my little box. If I put some text in here, I get this thing. If I change that text, it updates. And now we could do stuff with this. So if we wanted to change the way this displayed, right? Like we wanted to put in this statement about the contents of the text box, right? We might do something like, all right, well, I could do display text is, and then I can just take this formatted string here, drop that here, and say, all right, we're going to put display text there, and we're going to put display text here. And then we're going to hit run. We get this thing. And if we submit, it says, oh, that's frustrating. But it does update, which is nice. So that initial thing is a bit frustrating where it says this. So I think I want to somehow change my functionality. So here's a quick and easy way to change that functionality. So the way I'm going to change that is I'm going to use a simple little, I'm going to use an if statement. So I'm going to say if entry, right, entry being the variable I just assigned here. So if I manage to get something, right, that's not an empty string, then entry will read like it's true. If it has an empty string in it, it won't read as true. So this is going to have a kind of true value if there was something typed in. And then we're going to set the display text to this. And else... So just logically, I'm going to say if there was text, then we'll do these two things. And in the case that there wasn't text, right, then we should really just clear this label. So I'm just going to take this guy, and I'm going to set the text to an empty string. And that should clear that label, right? So it doesn't say the contents of the box are space period, right? It'll just say nothing. Okay, so I got my little window. If I put some stuff in, I get the contents of the text entry box are blah, blah, blah. If I have nothing in there, I get nothing. I'm a little bit curious about if I put 0 in there. Oh, cool. 0 treated as a string is a true thing. Cool. Yes. Should be noted that whatever you put in here is going to be treated as a string, probably. We could actually check that. Let's check that. So if we have something, let's configure the display. And so the display text we're going to use is going to be the contents of the box are, and a new line, and the type of the contents are, or is rather, I suppose. And we'll just call the type function on the contents entry. Okay, I'm hoping that made sense. So I'm just saying, all right, look, it's going to be the contents of the box are this entry, and then we're going to have a carriage return, right? And then we're going to say the type of the new contents is type entry. So then we're going to hit run, and we're going to see what type 0 is here. So if I put stuff in, I get, cool, it's a string class, right? If I put in 0, I get, and it remains a string class, right? So you probably wouldn't be able to add and subtract with this. You'd probably have to typecast it. You guys have a lot of experience now dealing with inputs. This is basically an input, right? It's just a GUI method of an input function. So if you have a method, say integer input or whole number input that you've written for an input dialog in the command line, you could probably adapt that pretty easily to validate input here. So I'll let you guys kind of run wild with this. But for right now, I think this is good enough for an introduction to Tkinter. So the important things are that we know that we need to make a function if we're going to use it for a button. It doesn't get parens, it just gets the function's name. We should know that everything has 2 stages, which is a creation and a put it into the window stage. You can put things into other things. So you can make a frame or a canvas and then stick buttons or entries or labels onto those kinds of things. So you can make a more nested diagram instead of, in this case, right, I just have a window that contains these 4 things, right? 2 labels, an entry box, and a button. And this was just creating a results label. And I think these comments are a bit ridiculous. But really they are create and display, I suppose. So I think this is probably good enough to get you started with Tkinter. We'll do some pulling of stuff from various places here. And this will be wrapped. What are my problems? Too many blank lines. Oh, I just didn't save this since I changed this. Okay, so there you go. If you run things in repels, they're just a tiny bit weird. The main loop, I think, gets kind of activated on its own. Just be aware that repels are going to be a little weird with these. It's not that they don't work, it's just that they're a little strange.